Yeah, it's 40.
Yay.
I don't know where the hell I got 43 from
Well,
earlier.
okay, so I think what happened
I think my
was,
brain is just fried.
well, I think that you were adding the two oh crap, what the hell is that franchise? There are too many franchises now. Texas
I did
Chainsaw.
add that one in, yeah.
And I think that we were probably adding Freddy versus Jason twice by accident because both times it's on
Mm.
both of these two different franchises.
Yes, that is what
So
happened.
I think that honestly just the way that they I think that the way that they write this shit on online is what messed us up. But no, I think that us writing it down was really really helpful.
Yeah.
The official number is 40.
Okay. Cool.
Cool. Tweet.
Hey there, film buds. Welcome to the special Slasher Extravaganza two-part episode as our big final farewell to Halloween month. It's exciting to have you here. I'm your host, Paul, and I'm joined as always by Lauren.
Hi.
Um, this was an episode that I kind of threw out at the start of the month, and it was just this casual idea. Let's go and do a whole bunch of slasher movies. Simple as that. Um, and you realize that there are a lot of them, but it doesn't sound that bad. But then you also realize that you're doing other stuff as well, and it becomes like a really daunting mountain. And like we ended up having like a whole bunch of them up to like the last minute. We literally finished watching them today. We started recording the show before we finished watching the episodes, technically. So,
Yeah.
um, it's been an exciting time. I don't want to make this intro too terribly long because we have a lot of content, enough that
Yeah.
we're breaking it in half. So essentially, the way that this is going to work is you'll hear I'll introduce the clip for the first franchise, which is Halloween.
Mhm.
And then after that discussion, you'll hear a clip for the next one in the franchise. Um, and then we'll start that like episode segment. And we'll do that, and then I'll have a little outro that'll let you know when part 1 is over and when you need to go and start part 2.
Well,
Um,
it's like an old VHS tape. It's like, please turn to side B.
and so yeah, I think that this is gonna be I think that this will be a fun one. I hope that you guys enjoy it. And this first part is going to focus on the three oldest and some of the biggest as well of the slasher genre: Halloween, which was originated by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill; um, A Nightmare on Elm Street; and Friday the 13th. And then part 2 is going to cover slashers that came about in the 90s, right at the sort of the end of the genre, actually. And that's Candyman and Scream. Part 1, we're going to also have joining us Nicolás Delgadillo and Madelaine Davis for some of our Halloween discussion. And then for part 2, we're being joined by Sky Tilley for Scream, because he literally wrote an essay about it. So, as usual, I hope that y'all enjoy it. It's going to be a good episode. Let's not have y'all wait any longer. This is Halloween.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago. Michael? Halloween.
So that was Halloween from 1978, directed by John Carpenter, written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill. And it stars Donald Pleasance Jamie Lee Curtis, the Scream Queen herself, Tony Moran, Nancy Keys, PJ Souls, Charles Cipher, Kyle Richards, Brian Andrews, John Michael Graham, and Nancy Stevens. And the premise is 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night, 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the town of Haddonfield, Illinois to kill again. So, the idea is that we're going to pretty much talk for a little while about the first one, and then we'll pivot into talking essentially about like everything that came after, kind of in a bulk, just to get everyone up to speed. So, who wants to, Nick? Since I guess you've done the most immediate watch of all of these,
Fresh, very fresh.
do you want to kick it off?
Sure. So we're talking about the original John Carpenter movie. Obviously, I don't know, like, what's new that can be said? Like, this movie has been dissected, like, there and back again. For me, what makes it so great is just like the simplicity of it. It's very, I don't know, it's very like loose stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like there's this guy who escaped from the mental institution, and he's gonna kill some people.
Yeah.
Like here we go.
You're right.
Did you? This was not
I
your
think,
first time seeing the first one.
No, I've seen the original. So okay, so I just watched everything except 2018 and Halloween Kills.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, the very first one I had seen was the Rob Zombie version.
Okay.
The 2007 Rob Zombie one. And then I went and after watching that, then I went and watched the original.
Okay.
And I had never seen any of the ones in between.
Okay.
And I never saw the second Rob Zombie one.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, like I said, it's just really good scare tactics. It's just good filmmaking, like good tension. The score obviously is doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
There was just nothing. I mean, there was stuff like it. It was just a very, very effective, scary movie about a murderer.
Matt, do you want?
I wanted to add like the POV stuff. Also,
Yeah.
was a big thing with this movie. There wasn't many stuff that was doing that, like the heavy breathing and everything. You're like, this is fucked up. Everybody in the theater on drugs in 78.
Yeah.
Just
No, that's
freaking out.
No, yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, woman. Now you may speak.
How kind. So kind of you both to allow me to do that. Yeah, no, I mean,
You know the rules.
So I've seen, obviously, like, I saw the original one, I want to say when I was, like, either in elementary school or maybe middle school, at, like, a friend's house. And I've seen, like, all the, I've seen some of the other ones, like, on and off, like, at slumber parties, but I hadn't watched any of them recently. The most recent that I've seen have been, like, we rewatched Halloween, the original one. We rewatched the 2018 Halloween, and then we watched Halloween Kills. But yeah, no, I mean, I loved Halloween from, like, the first time I think I saw it, which I remember was at, like, a friend's house. I think it was when we lived in, like, West Virginia. And I was at a friend's house, and their older sister was like, "It's fucked up, man. Like, it's gonna fuck you up. You're not ready for this, kid." And I was like, I really am, like, I'm curious. She's like, "You're gonna have nightmares." She stabs a guy in the eye with a coat hanger, and I was like, "Oh shit!" like she built it up to be like way scarier. In my head, I thought it was gonna be like 10 times gorier for some reason. But no, it's like very, it's like atmospheric scary. But there's like no, with the opening shot with the stabbed in the tits. There's like no blood in that whole movie. It was a lot less gory than I thought. Then I ended up really, really enjoying it. But my friend did have nightmares. Did have to go sleep in her parents' bedroom.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it's a super effective, super sleek film. You know, as Nick said, it doesn't need like a lot of explanation. John Carpenter had a pretty small budget. It's him and Deborah Hill, but then he does the score for it. He does the camera work for it. He does the cinematography for it.
It's very much like a labor of love, for sure.
Yeah. And it was originally called, like, The Babysitter Murders. That's the original title for Halloween. Which kind of tells, and John Carpenter has no kind of gripe telling you very bluntly how he feels about his past work. And he was like, yeah, it was just some movie that we made, like, it was called The Babysitter Murders. We made it. It was good, and that's that. Like, that's kind of... And then he's like, and then I didn't know what the shit I wanted to do after that. So I wrote a second one, and it was what it is. And that's kind of like John Carpenter's opinion.
Good.
And he's an incredible...
Just cashes that money.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. He's an icon.
Fair enough, man.
The man just wants to get high and or drink and play video games. And that's all he wants to do.
Same.
Don't we all?
And so,
if it's a good game.
The first time that I saw Halloween was in college for my horror class. It was like one of the films that he switched in and out for the slasher. He normally did like Texas Chainsaw and then either Halloween or Texas Chainsaw and then Alien. And I caught him on a year where we were doing Halloween instead of Alien. And I thought it was cool as shit. And to Nick's point, like, the soundtrack is doing a lot of work. I saw someone on Twitter compare it to Jaws.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a pretty apt comparison.
I totally agree. That's fair.
But I think it's great.
Like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, like, the soundtrack is, like, very simplistic, but, like, incredibly effective.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it draws you in, and it just keeps that hook going, so that way you constantly think about the dun 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 dun, and it just keeps repeating itself over and over again. And honestly, it works really well. I think it works better than the Jason whisper kills, is what I'm going to call them. Kill, 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 kill. I think that this is... I think this works so much better, and honestly, like, I think the less is more in this movie. The less you see of Michael, the more menacing that he is. And they really work with their budget and with the times, and I think they make a bitchin' movie. Honestly,
imagine being part of. We need to interview someone that experienced like the Friday the 13th movies in theaters, like a bunch of them. Like, what was going on in there?
Heroin and cocaine live in the theaters.
Not good stuff, man. Not good stuff. Not good stuff on screen. Not good stuff in the seats.
Nothing good was happening there.
No, man. Let me tell you, like, we talk about it later on. Halloween is definitely my favorite of the slasher franchises.
Even over Scream?
Yeah, ultimately, because even though I really enjoy the Scream franchise, and I think that the first one is probably, one of the most perfect slasher films ever made, I enjoy Michael. I love Laurie. I prefer Laurie over Sidney Prescott.
That's
that's going back to the first Halloween. I think one of the things that also does make that movie iconic.
Dewey, man.
Hashtag Dewey stands.
All the way.
No, I think that Laurie Strode and she...
Are you okay?
I'm perfectly fine.
We had an on-set incident, everyone. We're gonna have to call a union.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are fucking done. I'm shutting this down.
But no, I think that Jamie Lee Curtis takes that character that literally anyone else I think would have just been, no offense, is evidenced by her counterparts. Anyone else would have floundered, I think, in that role.
Yeah,
and
no, I
Jamie
mean,
Lee
that's
just elevates that whole thing because she was an icon in the part, and in the genre, much like her mother.
I feel like she's the only one in that. Well, not the only one, but of like the teenagers, I feel like she's the only one who's just like not 100% hamming it up the whole time. She actually understands that there's like a little bit of like subtlety in the film.
Her and Donald Pleasance
Yeah,
are
I
like
think
the
like
only ones.
two.
That...
Everyone else is just full fucking camp, which like I love.
Yeah,
It doesn't bother me.
To add to Donald Pleasance, who really just carries the rest of the movies on his back as best as he can.
Yeah.
This one too is he just is going nuts. His scenes with the sheriff are like hilarious, honestly.
I love them so much. I agree.
Like they're very funny. Like the sheriff has no reason like to believe any of this, and this dude is just rambling. Like I've seen the devil's eyes. Like, what are you talking about?
That scene always makes me think of fucking.
He's gone. The evil is gone.
He's so great. I love it.
He's crazy. It's because this poor dude like he looked into his eyes. It broke him.
It did. You're right.
Looked into his eyes.
Evil eyes.
That's right.
Oh no.
It's a funny thing. I like how does Michael know how to drive a car?
Well, yeah. I guess.
My general theory going into the later sequels, very so briefly, is that the cult taught him how.
Oh, boo.
That's the right response.
That's my theory. It's the best I got.
Oh, whatever. Who cares?
Man, he's murderous based on a zodiac sign. So, like, the cult could have taught him how to drive.
It's crazy. Best scene in Halloween for me is it's the obvious one, like the closet scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because there's nowhere to go.
Honestly, I think my favorite scene in that first Halloween I really enjoy, I think one of the most effective moments, it's not maybe my favorite, but I think one of the most effective moments is when Jamie Lee is running from like the neighbor's house, you know, and the neighbor turns on the light, then turns the light back off. And she's just kind of desperate and she's screaming and no one is coming out. And I think that that's a pretty effective moment for me in that first movie. My actual, I think, if I had to say any moment was truly my favorite moment, it is probably the moment where Donald Pleasance sees the kids
this is my favorite.
coming up to the porch, and he's like, "Lonnie, you get your ass out of there."
Perfect. We're done here. One
Incredible
take.
moment.
Thank you so much.
Because what a choice.
I love it.
Commitment.
I love it. Yeah.
That's probably my favorite.
100% agree. That's actually the scene I was gonna say is my favorite from that fucking movie. The only other scene I think.
So I was wrong. It's anytime he's on screen. You're right.
I mean, yes.
Right.
I mean, yes. No, I think.
Sorry. Yeah.
Such a good job. Again, it's kind of like building tension with like not a lot. Like one of the other scenes I really, really do enjoy is you know, it's like her friend who's babysitting and she gets the stuff on her shirt and not when she gets stuck in the window. That shit stupid as hell. But just like it's the knowledge of like, it's like, again, like nothing happens, but just the knowledge that it's like, he's out there, and she goes, and then you see him like outside the window, and it's just like,
It's a perfect opportunity.
it's just, yeah, the sketchiness, and just like the knowing, like, I always think like, how many times have I just like walked outside or like walked my, trash, and like, who the fuck knows? In my own paranoia, who the fuck knows who's out there watching it?
It's also what also makes it really scary is that this isn't, they don't reveal this, and then this later no longer becomes canon, I guess, that that Laurie is Michael Myers' sister.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just like a random act of violence,
Yeah.
like I have no idea who this person is. I have no idea like what they're trying to do, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
besides hurt me.
Yeah.
Well, and
Which I actually, I
Like-
don't know, I like that more. I feel
Yeah.
like there's
because it's very scary.
it is. Well, and it's
Yeah.
like more real life. Like there are
Mhm.
just
Hmm.
random acts of violence that occur, which is like more terrifying, I think, than I feel like you get into some of that too with like some of the Scream franchise and stuff like that, where they try to like interconnect, and everyone's like someone's secret fucking cousin, like all that kind of shit.
well, and
And it kind of takes away from it a little bit, because I agree. I like, which is like, again, thinking back, and we just recently rewatched the like most recent two, and I personally prefer thinking about like the OG Halloween, and then those two as like direct sequel, which they are supposed to be, basically. They retcon
yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
that shit.
Yeah, and like Sky brings up like Billy Loomis's whole monologue on motivation and Scream, and what's more palpable, knowing or not knowing, kind of, and with Michael Myers in this first one, you don't know, other than essentially he's here to recreate what he did that night, but kind of worse, because he goes and he gets his sister's headstone. And actually, what's interesting is Laurie Strode is the final girl, but the person that he clearly attributes to being the most like his sister is Annie,
because he's
the bad babysitter, the bad watcher.
Yeah, she's the one that he puts right
Mhm.
in front of his or her gravestone.
Exactly. So that's the person that he kind of equivocates with his own sister. And so like the movie is so simple, so clean, so straightforward that and I talk about it in a little bit of the write-up that I do. I say that a lot of horror slasher sequels go, and instead of focusing on like the cathartic experience of surviving a life-altering act of violence, you end up focusing instead on trying to understand the killer and digging deeper into their mythos in the sequels. And so oftentimes the body count ends up, mounting, and it becomes a little bit more, it becomes almost less horrific on a certain level the further into some of the sequels that you get, because it is about the mounting body count and about Michael or Jason or Freddy or whomever.
Yeah, and the lineage that kind of brings forth, and their connection to it, and it does make it less scary, because also like I'm not connected to this lineage, so therefore I'm technically fine, and like I can't put myself in those shoes anymore, because I'm not like the special breed of person,
and so
who's
this,
personally affected.
And so this first one, where there is no Michael Laurie connection, to bring it back around to Nick's point, is what makes this first one especially so palpable. It's like if Jaws only went after the children of Sheriff Brody, like
yes. Be a better movie.
Yeah, and we found out that like the only reason that Jaws was like this was because Jaws was an Aquarius, like.
And also he was half brothers with the sheriff's children.
That's right. And so
right. That's what happened.
And then they would, do the tie-in with Free Willy.
Yeah.
Obviously, yes.
Perfect. And then it would receive a revival with the Water Horse movie later.
Oh yeah, Jaws versus Willy versus Flipper.
Box office smash right here.
I'd watch that.
But no, that first Halloween film is really just incredible.
Mhm.
And I think that that's partially also why, even though other people try to replicate it, no one hits quite as hard as that first one. And also why, even though this franchise has its own hiccups, it never, I think, falters as badly as some of the others do.
You don't think it has a stinker quite like Freddy versus Jason?
No.
Beautiful film.
God, I
It's a
mean,
beautiful mess.
honestly, truthfully, I think gun to my head, to be honest, if you asked me Halloween 2 or Freddy vs. Jason, I'd probably watch Freddy vs. Jason again. Not Halloween 2 or Halloween Kills, but Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Oh, okay.
I had to specify.
I was like, I mean,
All
Halloween
right.
2 is just like, let's watch Jamie Lee gimp around a hospital for a little bit,
Yeah,
but
so I had to
Damn.
clarify. So Freddy vs. Jason I do not enjoy, but like gun to my head, I'd probably watch I'd probably watch Freddy vs. Jason again over Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I'll probably rewatch Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 eventually.
I haven't seen any of the Rob Zombie ones.
The first one's great. In its own way.
I think it sets a tone, and then the second one goes,
What
"All
if I
right."
didn't do that tone? What if I did none of that tone?
I'm going to lean further into Rob Zombie tones instead of whatever I set up in the first one.
Mm-hmm. So it's a different breed of cat.
Yes.
I like both of them.
I want to know what drugs he was on, man. I want to know specifically what drug it was, how much he took of it, and
A lot. He took a lot.
However much he could take off of his wife as a person, however much he could manage to consume off of her body.
Jesus.
He snorts her essence. A vampire. Like a vampire. It's just the essence.
So if you had to give the first Halloween a rating, I guess we'll go from who started first. So Nick, out of 5, what do you give Halloween?
I give Halloween a 4 out of 5. I dock a point because it's very funny when Michael shows his like little house of horrors and everything's perfectly timed. So,
No, Michael's just funny.
No, I know.
Michael's just funny. He's got jokes.
He's an
range.
artist. That was very creative.
He has a real sense of dark. He's got a macabre whimsy that I think David Gordon Green taps into again later on in his own films. I think that not many other filmmakers realized that Michael was very intentionally creating something specific.
It's a scene. Well, there's like
he sets a mood.
We talk about like there's like the opening shot in like the OG Halloween 78, and then at the beginning of Halloween Kills where they do the same thing, right? Yes.
Wait, repeat.
You know how they do like the shot that's like that like sort of like tableau in front of like the house.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
They do the yes.
No, but like I don't know. That's the thing that I really like about the movies is I feel like it's like it very much there's like a tableau. There's like a scene. There's like he's like I'm not just gonna murder people. I'm gonna make one of them fucking flop out of the closet upside down. I'm gonna fucking carve someone's head into like a pumpkin and shove a flashlight in it and be like me.
If anyone is
cute, right?
anyone on my path and immediate is immediate. But the moment that I have the chance to do something,
he's got to set a scene.
I want to do crafts with it.
Yes. Yeah. Really, he's really, that's what he is. He's just like, he really likes arts and crafts.
Artisan.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, I would give it like a 4.5. I love Halloween.
Okay. Dear.
I think I'll second that. 4.5, 4.5. Bams.
5.
Knew it.
Perfect film. I could honestly watch the first Halloween pretty endlessly. I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. Um, I don't have a lot of problems with it, and a lot of the issues that I do have, I guess, technically with it, um, I don't know. They don't fuss me too much because I think that
This movie is innocent.
I think that shit slaps, and I think a lot of people did a lot with very little.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I think that my main note is all of the rest of the acting that happens.
No, that's fair.
Where she literally like gets choked to death, and like we watch her go cross-eyed for like 5 minutes.
I love the cross-eyed death.
And so like
Rocks.
I gotta give them some points.
Rocks.
But no, I think that that's all pretty fair. I think that everything after this one is pretty much up to taste. I think the first one is universal. I think everything after the first one is immediately where we go, well, it's a little bit to taste.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
So the Halloween sequels. So which of these, you
Halloween
had seen the
sequels.
zombie ones, or you had seen the first zombie one, you still haven't seen the new sequels. So what did you think of specifically Halloween 2 through Halloween 6?
The Halloween 2, I think, is like fine, just kind of there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's fair.
like I'm like it's not bad. I think it's funny that Jamie Lee Curtis has like no lines. She's there. She just is like in the hospital.
And she's just like
You know,
she's like
like,
furniture.
Shit. You don't care that much about it. We kind of talked about this last time actually, because I had just watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like almost the same. Like we talked about, like the hospital is like incredibly empty.
Yeah, and they don't try to make you care about anyone. And anyone that they do try to
No,
make you care about in that hospital does not matter.
it's really weird. It's like dead noise
Yeah.
in that hospital, like,
Yeah.
or like it's
Um,
not. It's just noise, like in between the scenes. It's not any character building or anything.
And this is solidly the pivot, even though Laurie becomes the explanation for Michael's pursuit. You know, it is the minimizing of Laurie as a character and the increasing of Loomis as our real lead of the good guy side of the story for a little while.
Yeah.
That really like takes off from this point on, honestly.
Yeah.
For a while
That's good.
until up until his own, you know, personal death, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because Jamie Lee Curtis was like, and I'm out.
Yeah.
And then they like drag her back in too.
So like out of what did you think of Season of the Witch?
I really liked Season of the Witch.
Hell yeah.
Season of the Witch rip again, just because it's completely different.
Oh yeah, and it's
very cool.
confident in how different it is.
For me, Season of the Witch kind of reminded me on a certain level of almost like Stephen King does a Halloween story.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. So on Halloween 2, John Carpenter had some different ideas on what to do with it. Originally, he wanted to do an apartment, not a hospital. And they ended up settling on a hospital, and the script was short. And so they were like, you gotta give us more. And he was like, I don't know what the hell to do. And so he stayed up late and ended up writing a whole bunch of scenes, and that's what led to Halloween 2 having the whole sibling dynamic between Laurie and Michael. Is literally just him cranking it out. And he openly does not enjoy that part of the script. He openly does not seem overly fond of Halloween 2. And so Halloween 3 was them being like, what if we really did something different? And it absolutely was just bomb of the century, which is a real shame because it's a neat movie on its own terms.
Yeah, he like had wanted it to be like an anthology series.
Yeah. And I think
Or
on a
just
certain level,
yeah,
he did kind of achieve that. Because I think that if you look at it, you have Season of the Witch, then you have the finishing out of this first arc with 4, 5, 6. Then you pivot into H20, which
Mm-hmm.
reestablishes the timeline. Then you pivot into the Rob Zombie films, which does a whole remake. Then you pivot into Halloween and Halloween Kills, which again goes back and does this whole retcon reestablishing thing. So on a
Mm-hmm.
certain level, I think that they did do an anthology thing, just maybe not necessarily the way that they intended to do it.
right.
Yeah, it's more focused
Yeah.
around Michael instead of it just being like, desperate events that are happening just happen to be on the day of Halloween.
Yeah. It's perpetual reinvention of the core narrative.
Yeah. Choose your own adventure.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of the
The
return of?
season of the I was gonna say the season of the Witch Rocks has a mystery. Like this guy plays detective. It has like a cult. Yes, it has witchcraft, and it builds up and just like is insane by
It
the
leaves
end.
you in a cliffhanger too. It's nuts.
It's insane.
Well, and that movie also has some of the least violence, but it's also some of the most impactful
Yeah,
in the franchise. Like, I still sometimes, when I stop and think about the movies at large, think about the split open face, or the insects and the snakes coming out of the kid's head.
yeah,
Like it's
that part was
truly,
fucked.
yeah, that part is fucked.
My favorite is like his mom just like dying of like sheer shock.
A heart attack.
She just passes out on the ground, and that's it for mom. She is dead. Goodbye.
Yeah.
In really insane scene.
Yeah.
Because you have no idea like what exactly is the plan here, and he's like, "This is the plan," and you're like, "What?"
Why is this the plan?
So we're just killing
Amazing.
children.
Yes. Yeah, there's like a lot of reviews where like the plan makes no sense, and I'm like, well, that's like it's the chaotic nature of it. It's like a crazy
He tells you exactly why
mass genocide.
He's like,
sacrifice.
This is the lineup of, the planets.
Yeah.
This is going to be our greatest opportunity for our greatest blood sacrifice ever.
Yeah. That's the plan. The plan is killing children. Done.
and again, that goes back to the horror kind of even of Michael. It's not the sibling dynamic. It's just he's doing it. There's no greater meaning. He's just doing it.
Yeah.
He wants to. Isn't that more horrifying?
Yeah, it's which is a constant, even and probably especially in the Rob Zombie versions.
Yeah.
Also, okay, so Halloween 4, the return. Okay, the return of Michael Myers, I thought was mostly just like kind of boring. A lot of people like this. To me, I think I was mostly just bored.
This is our 8th. We ranked all of them.
Yes.
To also kind of help keep notes on just what was what.
Yeah, so Halloween 4 is the first one that introduces Jamie, which is Laurie Strode's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And Laurie is dead at this point.
Yeah.
And she's a little girl. And she was like adopted by like one of the families from the original movie. See, I can't even remember.
She's been adopted and she's living with her family, and her sister kind of there's this whole thing of like, you know, do you love me or do you not actually consider me family?
Yeah.
And all throughout is this connection to Michael that gets revealed, and along the way, eventually, like the sister ends up like going above and beyond to try and keep the sister safe. And the sister finally realizes that like her sister loves her, but also she realizes this connection with Michael, and she goes and she touches hands with Michael, and she sympathizes with him, and she comes
That's what
home
fucks up.
and decides to go, and that movie ends with her killing her mom. The next movie goes back and is like, oh no, she just stabbed her a little, but she's fine. But
A-okay.
But movie
Remember
4
the
is
big-
like,
Remember the big impact of the ending of the last movie? Well, just kidding.
yeah, no. Because like that was the thing that I did like about 4 was like, honestly, I thought the movie overall was pretty like, but that ending for me was really impactful. This idea that Michael was dead, but that because of the bloodline, there was something that was transmissible in it.
I do really like Rachel
Mm-hmm.
in that movie. Jamie's sister. Jamie's like, adoptive sister.
No, for
Yes,
sure.
yes.
No, I think that movie, for the most part, is pretty competent. The only reason I think that it's kind of down around 8 is because that's almost where I'm hitting the middle of the pack stuff, and like something kind of has to come down lower.
Yeah.
But of the like 4, 5, 6 movies, 4 is my favorite of the comeback films.
Oh, okay. See, I'm weird because I actually liked. I liked Halloween 5,
Okay.
the Revenge of Michael Myers, more than 4. I think because to me it was so bad that it was more entertaining to me than 4 was, because like you were saying, like most of 4 is just like all right. But Halloween 5 to me has like so many like bad moments that are just like very funny. So I was more engaged by it.
See, for me, the one that has the bad moments that make me go, "This is art," is Halloween Resurrection, which is my contribution.
Oh man,
to Halloween,
dude, we'll get to Halloween Resurrection. Mostly. I was like, what is this? You know.
But no, I like 5. I think that for me, it's a movie that's been like thoroughly tweaked, edited, messed with. That's why like the Man in Black story feels so pointless in 5. And so I ultimately end up preferring 6 over 5, but under 4.
Mm-hmm.
For me, 4, 5, and 6 are all kind of like really just to pick your poison of which evils you want to live and deal with.
I love 5 with the scene where she's like, big woman, where Loomis and everyone, they're trying to figure out where whoever is at, and they're at like a grocery store, and Jamie is like, cookie woman. Because she lost the ability to speak. And
I hate the fact that she just got like mute.
and her other friend, and that part's so funny because who is it? Tina, right? Tina's
so.
in that movie.
That's right.
And Tina goes to visit her in like the asylum, you know. And then as Jamie literally like a child like begs and screams for her to stay because she's like, you're gonna die out there or whatever. Like Tina's like, oh, I gotta go, sorry. Like, well, I really gotta go though. She's like, I gotta go get laid. She's like, there's a special someone, you'll find the special someone. And then she goes to the party, and then when they're like, hey, where's such and such, who she was with, she was like, why would I care? Like, what?
It's just so
It's
bad.
pretty funny stuff. Halloween 5 also has a really insane person who gets like the sex scene. He's like the blonde guy. You know what I'm talking about, who's like at the party, and he's like like he's insane.
Yeah, the
He's
weird like miscreant guy.
He's totally tweaking.
Yeah.
Like he's freaking out.
Freaking
out.
pitchfork and all that. He does like the jump scare on them and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the barn.
Oh. Goodness.
Very scary stuff. Like he should have been the villain.
Yeah.
The better movie right there. He was horrifying. I didn't like him. Sorry to that actor. Maybe you were trying to do a thing. Get back to me if you're listening to this. Explain yourself.
Let me know.
Leave it in the comments.
Email us at thefilmbuds.
That's right.
No, I get where you're at. So what did you think then of number 6, The Curse of Michael Myers?
I didn't like 6.
What did you think of Paul Rudd?
Paul Rudd is fine. He just like, unfortunately, he doesn't seem to know what the hell's going on, because how could you?
Not even a
and
little bit.
If you read the production, they were writing it like while they were filming and everything. So, you know, like I don't understand like who everyone in that movie is like. I don't understand any motivation. I don't understand my character. I don't know what's happening.
I think it's the worst with Tommy, with Paul Rudd's character, because like from scene to scene, he'll just, you know, his entire motivations will shift and change, and like his emotional responses will change, and just feels like you're not sure what level this man is truly on, like mentally at a certain point.
You keep thinking it's going to be like, aha, like I'm in on it, because he acts all weird, and maybe that's the trick. Maybe that's the point. But
also, they're not really like leaning into that as hard as I feel like they should be. You know,
I don't know.
Really pick a lane. Once he gets that baby, he's like, I'm instantly less motivated to being the creepy neighbor, but I may still watch you through my telescope. TBD.
Donald Pleasance kills it yet again.
No, I was
every
about
time.
to say number 6 is definitely like, since number 2, this is the one where Donald Pleasance has probably had to do like the most to carry the whole thing.
Well, he's literally picked up the entire franchise on his back and is trudging through the snow right now with it.
No,
and that's like, number 6.
He's working his ass off to keep this movie afloat. Which one did you end up watching?
I watched the producer's cut.
Okay. So what are some of the differences between the original and the producers?
So the producer's cut ends with
Loomis and him, the doctor. Isn't that?
Loomis gets like the curse of Thorn. And so I guess he's either gonna start killing people, which would be very funny. They should have. I want to see that. or he's gonna get someone to do the killing for him, like Win, whatever that guy's name was. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was anything more that you knew.
No. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Okay, there are different scores and musical cues.
Oh.
There are shifts in the plot. It said let's see. Okay, so in the finale of the producer's cut, Kara awakens at Smith's Grove Sanitarium on his concrete slab, surrounded by the cult members. They're gonna kill the baby, Stephen, that Paul Rudd found, the bus station. That's a good scene.
Yeah,
By the way, when he finds the baby.
that's probably one of his best scenes in the movie.
So it's revealed that Stephen the baby is a product of incest between Jamie and Michael. How wonderful. and uses this to try to convince Michael not to kill the baby. Tommy holds Wynn hostage, forcing the cult to free Kara, and they run with the children through the sanitarium until they reach a locked gate. This scene is hilarious. Tommy uses the power of the ancient runes to stop Michael in his tracks. This is literally Paul Rudd emptying a little bag that might as well be like D&D dice. Just little like rock runes, and he just like places them on the ground. And then he like controls Michael with it. It's
That's
amazing. Right. And then he has to go and like, unfortunately, he has to like deadpan, like, it worked. Like the light of the ancient runes like stopped him. Or some shit like that.
Poor Paul Rudd.
Of unfortunate dialogue.
Thankless job.
That's right.
So, yeah. Another substantial difference is the producer's cut. So in the original version, Jamie Lloyd dies like in the field after getting chased down in the car, and that's it. In the producer's cut, she's remains in a coma at the hospital, and she's in the movie for like a good bit longer, but she still dies. Someone comes and shoots her in the head. That's in the cult.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
My God.
These movies all blend together at a certain point.
But that's also just where we're at mentally.
No, yeah. That's what happens when you watch 40 movies in a month.
Yeah, so
in the theatrical cut, the guy who Michael throws into like the power plant or whatever, the electrical grid, in the theatrical cut, they added a shot of his head graphically exploding.
Nice.
Man, add that back in.
That's some fun. There's probably like a hybrid cut somewhere online, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. For sure. So then after this, they did the first reboot for the anniversary, which was H20, which is 1998. I like this one a lot.
Man, this is a good one.
Yeah. It goes back to the basics. It's simple.
This was very good. I think the drama between Jamie Lee Curtis and her son is very compelling.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoy her relationship with the guy who plays her like love interest. I don't remember his name at the moment.
Adam Arkin.
Yes, yeah, I think they have great chemistry. I think that Jamie's got her classic haircut of the 90s, and she looks great in it.
LL Cool J and his wife over the phone.
That's
very
right.
Funny.
The surprise he survives at the end is also
that was very funny.
Like he died, but that's fine. Those are minor details.
He was up, walking and talking.
Yeah, he was okay. Didn't even need to get rushed to the hospital. He was like, "Baby, I'm gonna make another book." At the end of the movie, like he was good. Perfect.
Honestly,
I think it's hilarious how at the end, Jamie Lee Curtis is like, go on without me. And they're like, what are you doing? She's like, go without me. She like stays to like fight him like an idiot. and like does a terrible job of it.
No, yeah, this movie, I think it does the good job of bringing down the body count and some of the typical sequelisms while also still making Michael effective and creepy and terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot more people survive than you think. I kept thinking like they're dead, they're dead.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
The teenagers, just so convenient that they all went on like vacation or whatever. Whole empty school basically for Michael to kill like 2 people in.
They all went to Yosemite.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, it's like it's a pretty low body count for a little while before you get LL Cool J coming back. You even think for a little while that he's dead, but it's not even Michael's fault, It's an interesting little movie. I like H20 a lot.
No, yeah, and honestly, I think that this movie does a really good job of kind of like subverting what you're expecting while still also fitting in a comfortable groove of this is a Halloween movie. These are the things that a Halloween movie does. And honestly, yeah, I love the twist that like he doesn't get, attacked by Michael, as that's the cause of him going down, because you're totally with the character the entire time. You expect, when he pulls the trigger for it to be Michael Myers and not LL Cool J at the end of the hall, because you're right there with him the whole ride. And I think that this movie just does a really good job of keeping audience attention from like beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some of the others, I definitely remember zoning in and out of at random and going, "Where are we now? What's happening?"
Yeah. It's just good.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are your thoughts on Resurrection?
Like I said, man, it's a snooze. I think the opening is so like insulting. That's funny how they're just like, actually, she didn't kill him. From H2O, like, and now she's dead. They just killed Jamie Lee Curtis right off the bat.
Oh yeah,
they say fuck her.
And it's going to be about these random people in this house doing like a web series, and they're like live. They were live streaming it before. It was cool.
That's right.
But the movie doesn't do anything interesting with that at all, in my opinion. Not camera wise, not story wise. They don't, to me, it doesn't do anything interesting with it. And they like have like the cuts to like people watching, and then they like kind of just like abandon it.
Yeah.
Until they're like cheering at the end.
Like right when it would become engaging. Yeah. Like right when it would become engaging, they're just like, we don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And you don't care. I think Busta Rhymes fighting Michael Myers is awesome. That's
10 out of 10.
Amazing.
Cinema.
That's right.
True cinema, dude.
No,
he's good, dude. I mean, genuinely. I think he's good.
No, for sure. I think that everything that you said about the movie is pretty fair. I thought that it was pretty weird that they killed Jamie Lee literally right at the start, just after bringing her back. And especially the way that they did it.
Yep.
It felt very like, I don't want to come back. And they were like, well, you have to. And she was like, then kill me.
And they said, okie dokie.
Yep.
And it is so weird that we set up this final girl throughout the whole movie just to have Busta Rhymes literally save the whole fucking day. But for me, I think that this was just such a departure from the franchise at large. Like, I know that a lot of people are like, oh, Season of the Witch is really out there. Like, this is the most out there Halloween movie of them all, I think. Cause,
yeah, but Season of the Witch is good.
Oh, no, for sure. I think this movie is absolutely fucking nuts. I think that I like it for being so dumb.
Yeah, a little bit. it's stupid. It is a stupid movie where, you know, you're just following a bunch of teen kids doing stupid teenage kid things, and
I was
and
so bored.
Oh man, trust me, this thing is so much better than most of the Friday the 13th movies.
I
uh
bet.
I think
I'm
it's
not
probably the
watching
most
this.
Friday the 13th that the Halloween franchise ever gets for me.
That's true.
It just says, what if we didn't care anymore and we just kept Michael popping in at random spots, and now the Myers house has a tunnel system. That's
At
the
that
only
point,
thing.
you got to blame the audience.
Yeah.
Like cut it out. Even even Transformers didn't get that far. We only got 5 of them.
I mean, honestly, if given the chance, I feel like they'd get this far.
All right, so Nick, if you had to rank the, I don't want to keep you too long. I know that you've got other things to do.
No. I got time.
Okay, you sure?
Yeah. I
All
set
right.
the time for this.
All right, let's do it then. All right, so Halloween Resurrection. After that, we move on to, what is that? I guess the reboot,
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
Rob Zombie reboot.
Zombie.
This is a special film for you.
Yeah. This was a very affecting movie. Like I said, this was the first version I saw of it, and I had never seen. I guess there's like these kind of movies kind of came out around this time, like the early 2000s and everything, where horror just had like a real intensity to it and like a real like dirty kind of realism
Yeah.
that could that could still be shocking, you know, like a weird like it used that to show like there's always a way that horror can still be like shocking, right? You think you've seen it all, and then the genre evolves into something different. So I think Rob Zombie really thrived during that time, like the post 9/11 horror
Yeah.
kind of vibe. So yeah, the first time I saw this was like pretty soon after it came out. So I was I can't do math, 14 or 15 when I saw this. I just never seen that kind of violence portrayed like that,
Yeah.
you know. In particular, the scene that I was just like really like after this scene, which is very early on, is when he kills his school bully. Honestly, from that moment on, like I watched the rest of the movie just kind of like in a daze, like only thinking about that one scene.
Yeah.
Because I'm especially horrified of like getting literally like beaten to death.
Yeah.
That level of intensity. I like that he goes for like the realism. Like, oh well, like what if Michael isn't especially like a mythical or like a supernatural like creature in this.
Mm-hmm.
He could just be like a huge like hulking dude who's just like mentally broken because of like a shitty childhood. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. Like I said, this was just like such an intense movie for me. I hadn't seen anything on that level before. And yeah, I don't know. There's something about Rob Zombie's movies, like the movies like this, get like the rep of like they're so violent and so like a dour, and nihilistic and everything, like for the sake of it. And I think I think that's definitely fair for like a lot of stuff. But I don't know. So something about like Rob Zombie's movies, I think he is able to capture like some kind of truth in it in like a weird fucked up way. In the same way, if you look at like his influences like Tobe Hooper, and that was like another really big movie for me was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Just because there's something just so like you're like, this is like fucked up what I'm watching, you know?
Yeah.
This is like so much.
No, for sure. Honestly, watching the Rob Zombie Halloween made me kind of recontextualize a little bit of like where Halloween Kills comes from. You know, I hadn't seen the zombie film before seeing Kills, and suddenly, and Kills is a pissed off, mean spirited, nihilistic, dour kind of movie.
Okay.
But I think it's trying to again grip at something through that a little bit realer.
Yeah.
And so watching Halloween, this 2017 reboot, I was like, holy shit, this is definitely the straw that he is grasping at very heavily. Is this almost painful to watch thing that takes some of the veneer off the violence and just makes it breathtaking.
Yeah, like really the performances are what just knock it out of the park. There's just such like a ferocity to him. Like I said, there's like a truth to it. Like this kind of violence, and again in this movie, they don't do the reveal of I don't think they do. No, they don't do the reveal that like they're brother and sister in this movie.
In the zombie one?
In the zombie remake. They reveal it in the second one.
They reveal it for Laurie in the second one, but like I think it's known for the audience that Laurie is related to Michael pretty early on, especially when he like shows the picture at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
that was that movie. Okay, right, yeah, that's where I was fucking up. No, you're right. I was wrong. Anyway, well, still like this. My point was he captures this thing of like this kind of violence is just like it is like disgusting, like it is upsetting.
Yeah,
it is longer than you'd like. You know, this kind of thing would go on longer than you'd like, and the ones that go quick are still just as upsetting.
Yeah,
you know.
And that definitely, I think, is something, again, going back to Kills, is something that I felt very kindred here, was that kind of like certain ones are meant to make you uncomfortable because that's just how it's playing out, you know, like that person is just bleeding out, that person is just dealing with that right now. Whereas other ones are just like, Michael needs to get through. You know, and there is a very real distinction in him as a character of this weird brutality that can sometimes go for so long versus I just need to be efficient now. And it is always a very interesting character choice. And you see that on display in both this and Kills. And a little bit less so in Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie Halloween 2.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
The most like this movie, Halloween 2, is the opening in the hospital.
I think that I enjoyed the Rob Zombie version of it. This was my first time watching it. I think that the movie really, really soars when it is focused primarily on Michael and his perspective and the things most closely related to him. I think that the movie really falls once we like switch over to it being about Laurie. I think that I don't know who she is, the actor who plays Laurie or any of her friends. I thought that they were pretty subpar, as just keeping my interest of whether or not like there's stakes or anything related to them. And I guess for me, I could have dealt with less of that part of it because most of that narrative also pretty much follows the original Halloween almost verbatim. except for like minor tweaks here and there. And I definitely feel like
Right. And
I loved.
you didn't want it to do that.
No, yeah, and also like I know that story, and I just didn't need to see, I guess, like a worse or acted version of it, just to keep this storyline going. Like,
Or you would have
Mhm.
preferred to just keep it specifically in the Michael perspective.
yeah, you know, I think that like we really had like an interesting thing, like starting with Michael and like moving. Like I could have seen that whole Halloween day through Michael's perspective more often instead of just like watching, you know, not Jamie Lee Curtis run around and screaming for help, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I thought that it was really interesting, like his whole like interest with the masks and stuff like that. That was something that we had never like focused on, and I really like his childhood and all of that stuff. I thought that those were like really the strongest points of this movie for me. Was like, you know, almost feeling bad for him the entire time. You know, even through all of his brutal attacks and all
Poor
of that.
Danny Trejo, man.
Oh, poor Danny Trejo! Like you feel so bad. Yeah, I wanted more Danny Trejo.
So what did you think of Halloween 2?
I like Halloween 2 less, but I still do like Halloween 2. To me, it's just like a less compelling thing of like the same idea that he does of just like capturing like how violence kind of like can permeate, you know, and spread,
Mm-hmm.
and follow you.
Yeah.
Follows.
And like the cruelty of it, you know. Like I said, like there's such dour movies, and like almost everyone, like so many of the characters are just like scumbags, and the ones that aren't, either like die horrifically or are like forever scarred.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think that for me,
Right.
Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, I think that it's a very ambitious movie that's rarely landing as much as it wants.
Mhm.
And also sometimes I feel like it just doesn't feel as well thought out, and maybe that is just because he had such a crystal vision of what the first one was supposed to be. But I don't think that he went into the second one having anywhere near as like defined a story, and so the whole thing for me felt very, very loose compared.
Yeah, he didn't want to do it originally. He said he was pretty burnt out from doing the first one,
Yeah.
and they were like you have to do a second one, and he's like I don't want to do it, and like you have to do it. He's like, okay, fine, but like I want to be able to do whatever I want, and they're like, okay, but like he didn't have a ton of time to do it.
Yeah.
I think that
He took a bunch of time off, like after the whole release of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I think that for me, I think that the movie is like going fine for a while, and then we start to really lean into the like shared psychosis, I guess is what I'm going to call it, of Michael and his, now that we know, sister Lori, or Angel Myers. And I guess for me, the line of where really where it hits reality for me is kind of squiffy, you know. That whole scene where she's getting like held down by these visions of the past, basically, and like fighting for her life, and everybody's like, Lori, there's nothing there, there's nothing holding you down, and she's totally in it, and they're sharing this whole like vision. You know, for me, I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me with this at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm totally fine with like the mysticism of it. I guess I just wanted, you know, to understand the rules a little bit more of it,
Right.
to kind of, I guess, ground it in what it was trying to tell me in the plot, because for the longest I just assumed that this was something that was purely just Michael's hallucination, Michael's fantasy. And then when it started to specifically affect Laurie, I was like, where does this line end? And is it just because they're related that they're now seeing these things, or is it something more than that, or is it not as complicated as that? You know?
Yeah. I think it's a mistake to set it like only a year later.
Because it feels like so much time has passed.
That's really not that much time. Like, she's like seems to be like physically fully recovered, which is contradictory to like the extensive like surgery that we get to see at like the start of the movie in the hospital. Like, she can move around like totally fine, you know. She's fully physically recovered from that ordeal.
Yeah, and completely healed, you know, it's totally fine.
And they're like let's go party.
Yeah. I enjoyed his mountain man journey.
I love this scene with the therapist, and she's like, the therapist is like, that's right, like Halloween's like one of your triggers, isn't it? Like,
it was just last year.
It was literally yeah, I guess so. Yeah, if I can guess so. I really love this version of Loomis, because Malcolm McDowell is just amazing, where he's just like a scumbag.
Oh yeah, read my book, you'll love it.
He doesn't give a. He's amazing. He's fantastic.
No, yeah. The one thing that I enjoyed the most, I think, in Halloween 2 is the carryover of some of those seeds from Halloween of him kind of critiquing
everything. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's sorry to interrupt, but like that's what I'm saying. It's like the nihilistic. It's like the kind of dark. Like, yeah, like everybody like sucks pretty much. Like I said, you know, and the good ones suffer, and the rest like suck so much. And he's just like, because that's life, because that's the real world. That's what I'm saying. It goes hand in hand with the extremity of like the violence, and like the uncomfortable realism of the violence. Because like doesn't it? Isn't it fucked up?
No, for sure. And I think that they're openly trying to definitely make some comments in that first one and moving into that second one about, No, I think it goes into that whole discussion on the mental health institute. I think that sometimes these films like to kind of dance around this place of like, mental health institutes is not actually really being the safe havens that they want to present themselves to be. And I think in that first movie they just sort of make Loomis the good guy, you know, on a certain level. But then moving beyond that, you know, Halloween 2 shows how the hospital is kind of not only understaffed but poorly staffed, and also that the mental institute that Loomis works for lies and is more more worried about its own personal image. And then you move into Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and hospitals are a part of the cover-up. And you move into Halloween 4, 5, and 6, which is the lead up to the mental institute literally being a part of this cult, you know, that ignores and uses Michael. And so there's this kind of repetitious thing of pretty biting criticism of the Mental Health Institute and healthcare overall. And Rob Zombie definitely does bite into that in Halloween, and then he doubles down on it even further in Halloween 2 when he moves into Loomis just truly being a preening, self-promoting ass. And just kind of taking all of the glory that character might have had and just completely evaporating it.
I like him flirting with the reporter.
Yeah.
Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 also features surprise Octavia Spencer.
It does.
And surprise Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and a little Chris Hardwick as well.
It surprised Chris Hardwick.
Yeah. A lot of weird cameos in that movie.
Yeah. The sheriff has the most compelling plot for me. Is the most compelling story.
You know who Sheriff Brackett is in these films?
No, please tell me.
That's Grima Wormtongue in Two Towers and Return of the King.
Oh, sorry, response.
I see it, of course. Oh,
Yeah.
Killed it.
It's one Mr. Brad Dourif.
Props to you, sir. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, I guess we can talk real quickly about Halloween and Halloween Kills. Matt is back, and so we can just kind of touch on them really quickly. Nick hasn't seen them yet.
Oh. Sorry, my boss needed a thing, so.
It's inappropriate.
Essentially, I'll say this about Halloween and Halloween Kills. I think that, Halloween came out on the 40th anniversary. It's part of this kind of reboot. We'll go back, do this repetitious title that implies, that we're kind of reintroducing and reinvigorating. And I think that Halloween does a better job than some of the other ones at very gracefully kind of picking up the narrative and moving on. I think that of all of the different timelines and different sequels that came off of that we've had, Halloween leading to Halloween 2 through 6, Halloween leading to H20 and Resurrection, and now Halloween leading to Halloween and Halloween Kills. I think Halloween and Halloween Kills are currently my favorite through line of the narrative, because I think that on top of them being the most currently politically relevant, I think that they do the best job. I think David Gordon Green and Dana McBride are really obvious fans who understand how to take the best parts of a lot of these lesser sequels and stitch them into something invigorating and interesting that both fits into exactly what a Halloween movie is, but also still manages to find new ground to tread.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I actually think, like one of the things I really enjoy about Halloween and Halloween Kills, you mentioned earlier this kind of idea with a lot of the sequels of delving more into like Michael Myers and like what makes him, I almost said Mike Myers. I'm in the mind of Mike Myers. What made him make fat bastard is the like a lot of those.
You really are a fat bastard.
Same person.
A lot of those movies, really kind of are concerned with like Michael Myers. Who is Michael Myers? Why does he do what he does? Whereas I feel like these are way more concerned with this idea of of trauma and surviving trauma and what that does to you. And like Halloween, the 2018 in specific, it's Laurie all these years later, and like she was married, she got divorced, she had her daughter taken from her. Like she's lost so much because she's never been able to get beyond that night.
Mm-hmm.
And so like those movies are so much more concerned, again, not with like Michael Myers and like what makes him tick, what makes him kill. It's like what's the outcome of those actions. And then like the character who is super invested in the two characters who are super invested in figuring out Michael Myers, like what makes him tick, are of course like the podcaster and then his other therapist,
Zartan.
Yeah, Zartan. Who both end up obviously like dying horrible deaths. And yeah, like I feel like they kind of, it's like very obvious like that's not the point. One, and I know you've talked about this, PJ, the way Michael Myers does talk because they both ask him to talk, and the way he does talk is through violence. But I don't think the movies themselves are concerned so much with why violence is the means in which he speaks, so much as like the outcome of that violence and how that impacts other people.
Yeah.
And so like it's very much her survivor story and like her story of like dealing with trauma, and how that also like impacts generations, because then you have her daughter, her granddaughter, both now dealing with her, and you know, obviously in like at the end of that movie, and then in Halloween Kills, dealing with violence and trauma in two very different ways. And so like it picks up with Halloween Kills, and like, you know, not to spoil it because you haven't seen it, but like Laurie's been injured, and like her daughter, Laurie's daughter, you know, she's like trying to come to grips with everything that's happened, like everything that happened at the end of the Halloween 2018. Like there's like a whole scene with her in the hospital. She just like closes the blinds and like cries. It's like she's finally starting to like process like everything that happened. Meanwhile, her daughter is like, let's go fucking find Michael Myers and let's fucking kill him. Like it's like pure like revenge, like the way she deals with
Dumb
it.
one.
Yeah, the way she deals with it, she's like, let's fucking do a murder. Like, let's go fucking kill this guy.
That always works.
Yeah, it always turns out. Well, and of course, then Halloween Kills itself is like way more concerned too with like almost this sort of like social contagion of like fear and violence, and how that can be just as destructive of a force as like one person doing an evil thing.
Well, my thesis on Halloween Kills kind of essentially boils down to this, which is essentially that like David Gordon Green's main points are stories are things that we tell each other and ourselves that are not always the truth. What you do is who you are. Fear is ultimately deadly, and at the end of the day, your intention means very little, if not nothing, compared to what you actually do. And I think that also Sartain is kind of, in a weird way, the bad guy of the first Halloween, the 2018 one, even more so than Michael on a certain level.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's the one that causes the bus crash. He's the one that takes them down this whole thing. And in this one, I think it's pretty obvious in Kills, you know, spoiler alert on a certain level, I think Tommy Doyle is definitely meant to be our antagonist.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that it's a pretty effective movie because I think that it manages to tell a movie that, kind of like Candyman, is very topical to right now, but manages to couch it all without using any of the terms that more on the nose people are using right now. And I think that's some of why people find it so disquieting.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much a movie about like mob mentality. And you know, I mean, I know you've done like a whole read into like this, obviously this past year, and how that can be interpreted. But yeah, I mean, I honestly think like, obviously there's like a huge body count, not huge, big for
it's his
Halloween.
Biggest,
it's his the biggest body count. But like, it's funny because I feel like in Halloween Kills, all of that is honestly kind of like dwarfed to a certain extent by like the town's own violence.
Which really just has one body count.
Yes, but still left much more of an imprint, I think.
Well, and also again that movie, not to get too deep into it, it actively punishes literally every single person who chooses violence. Almost every character has a moment where they could choose something else, and even if it's the moment where in another movie this would be the good guy moment, this movie says, you're an idiot for choosing that.
Yeah.
And it regularly kind of takes every single moment that someone goes, I'm gonna choose violence in some kind of way, and pretty directly turns that around on them. Big spoiler alert, the thing that ultimately ends up killing the mob only ends up in Michael's hand because stabs him in the back.
Yeah.
And so, like, the movie, and then that's ultimately what brings Michael back around to kill them. And so, the movie regularly punishes any kind of people being like, this is my moment.
Yeah.
And it's a moment of choosing violence.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I don't know, I have mixed feelings about that movie. There are things that I really like about it. There are things that I don't like about it. And I also really felt like Laurie and like almost felt like she was like in it, but very much like ancillary. Like she was not.
No, and that's, I think, one of the really controversial decisions about Kills
Is there a protagonist then?
It utilizes an ensemble, but I think that it knows that it's going. It wants to perpetually use an ensemble. It's not necessarily that it's lacking for a lead character. I think it's actively choosing to focus on like 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, I'm just really not certain where they're gonna go.
I'm curious to know where they're gonna go.
Like where it leaves off, I was like, well, what the fuck are they gonna do now?
It's kind of like, honestly,
I don't fucking, okay.
For me, it feels very much almost like Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, where the first one was this really great thing that kind of brought it back, also kind of played the hits, did it really, really great. I think Halloween 2018 is better than The Force Awakens, but that's not the point of this metaphor. And then you move into The Last Jedi, where it's like this fan kind of wants to go and make this ultimate movie that's what he wanted to always make, but also on a certain level is designed to take everything that a fan would want and go, ha-ha! And it leaves you in this certain place of just like, it's almost an ending. Like, this could almost be where it ends.
Yeah, and then the curtain comes down, and then
when
that's
Halloween
it.
Kills and the credits roll, I almost honestly go, like, I don't know if I need anything else. And on a certain level, that's how I walked away from The Last Jedi. And that's how I kind of feel with Kills, is like, damn, like, I know that technically the story could do more, but like,
you feel like might be best to like leave it with that.
Yeah, because it almost kind of.
It's a real downer.
What the fuck else are you gonna do?
It's like a very dour.
Yeah.
Movie.
Mm-hmm.
There was like at least some like camp and fun in Halloween 2018. Like,
and there was hope.
And there was some hope, and like none of that exists in Halloween Kills.
This movie is not your comfort blanket.
No, and I mean maybe they'll make up for that in the next one, because it's supposed to be like a time jump or whatever.
Yeah.
Is like,
it?
Because like COVID will have happened between
Ends is going to be a time jump.
I'm trying to understand how that's gonna fucking work.
Okay, so here's my.
They're incorporating COVID into it.
No, so it will be a world where COVID has happened. COVID is maybe not necessarily a plot point, but like it will be in a world where COVID has also existed.
Like they've confirmed this already?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? At least Mike Myers passed it up.
Yeah.
There's gonna be like an awkward like line of dialogue about like, and things sure got even crazier.
We thought it was crazy when Michael Myers attacked the child.
My theory is that Michael Myers is going to, and I could be dead wrong about this, my theory is that Michael is going to, on a certain level, end up being a metaphor for all of the things that people just learn to live with. Whether that be something either. Like, and Laurie is the only one who's fighting against it. how that ends, I don't know.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I think that the big overarching metaphor of it is going to be Michael becomes something that the town of Haddonfield just learns to live around, kind of
Yeah.
living through COVID.
I see what you're talking about. Living through COVID, living through like mass shootings, living
Mhm.
through like, all the crazy
And Laurie
shit.
is the only one that's still trying to actively fight against this thing that the rest of Haddonfield is like, just give it space. Just don't deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, is that too on the nose?
I don't think Halloween Kills has a ripping fart about being on the nose or not.
I mean, yeah, I guess you make a fair point. I'm curious to see where they go with it because honestly, I mean, I'm with Matt. I really have no idea.
That's my best guess. Like, I really scratched my head,
go.
and I was like, the only thing that I have is that everyone goes, well, I guess Michael now has taken Lampkin Lane, and that is his now.
Because I mean,
don't go there.
He just did like a fucking murder free for all, half the town gone, and then what's I can't. I always just call her Laurie's daughter and Laurie's granddaughter. Is it Karen?
Karen and Allison.
Allison, that's it. I kept wanting to be like Karen. And I was like, no, her name's she's not really the white lady Karen.
Well, and what's
she?
so impactful in the case of Allison is they have Karen at the start of Kills go, your dad, his spirit will always be with us. And it almost hits a little hollow. And then at the end, once Allison has lost certain people and has seen everything that Michael can do, her only thought is, he'll always be with us. And they re-echo that dialogue. And for her, it's not her dad and his happy memory that's now going to always be with her.
It's like it's trauma. Trauma's going to be with everybody.
It's a great...
trauma forever.
Kills his art.
And then they get like the hand in hand at the end of Us, and they just like make the world is healed now because we're all holding hands, and is that right?
I don't know I don't know. I'm curious to see what's gonna happen to tie it all up. But
it is already confirmed called Halloween Ends, so I think that David Gordon Green wants to end it, and then if someone else wants to come along later and do something else, that's fine. But I think David Gordon Green is like, I came here to tell my story.
Yeah, this is my trilogy, and good day.
I still think it would just be great if it turns out at the end they unmask him and it is just Mike Myers.
Plot twist.
I mean, I like always and forever still think that would just be great.
We unmask it, and it's been John Carpenter this whole time, just trying to get back home.
Or that. That's fine too. Fuck it. Like,
murdering people along the way.
I really want them to like try hard to like make a statement, and then at the end they're just like, I got jokes.
It gets extra campy. They lean into it hardcore.
It's Rick Astley.
Yes.
All of these are good options.
You just get Rick rolled. The end.
So real quickly,
Rick roll credits. She was the only person who likes that joke. Nick's like, I don't know why I'm here for this. It's like it was better when she was gone.
real quickly, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up so that way this episode doesn't get too out of hand. I will go ahead and tell y'all our Halloween rankings. So we ranked all 12 of the films. So our first one is Halloween 78. Our second one is Halloween Kills. Our third one is Halloween 2018. Our fourth one, we split, and I say Season of the Witch. She says H20. Our fifth one, we switch, and I go H20, and she goes Season of the Witch. Then Halloween 2007. Then Halloween Resurrection. Then The Return of Michael Myers, The Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween 2 from 1981, then The Revenge of Michael Myers, and coming in last place, sorry Rob, it had to be someone, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 from 2009, rounding out the bottom. And so, those are our rankings. Nick, do you want to try and rank yours, or?
Oh, God, I have no idea. Let me Someone has to like keep track of this for me.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna go from the bottom to the top.
Okay.
All right, which one did I like the least? Oh God, no. The bottom is Resurrection.
Okay.
Sleepy time. Okay. All right. After Resurrection. Put the Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween 6. And then Halloween 4. And then Halloween 5.
Okay.
Halloween 2.
Which one?
The 1980 whatever.
All right.
1981?
81.
1979? Whatever.
81.
Then the Rob Zombie Halloween 2.
Okay. 6 more.
And then Season of the Witch. Then H20. Then Rob Zombie Halloween, and then John Carpenter Halloween.
All right. So there you have it, folks.
Is that all of them?
No, I'm gonna watch the new ones like starting tomorrow, probably. So
I'm curious to hear what
I will
you
know
think.
soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely let us know. We'll share that on Twitter with the posting of the episode. As always, thank you both, Matt and Nick, for joining us. This has been a hell of a thing, and in actuality, this is actually the last thing we recorded. The first thing that we did was the first thing that we did the last thing that we did?
Yeah, because the first thing we recorded was Scream with Sky, which is technically the last thing on this recording. So
First thing we did was the last thing we did.
Everything's out of order.
And so this is actually the end of a long journey for me, but it's been quite a ride. Thank you both for coming on. And this is also the first chronologically in what we're doing, 1970. And so coming up next, we have from 1980, the poor, sad copycat killer himself, Jason Voorhees, kicking off with Friday the 13th. And as always, we have a clip, so take a listen.
Friday the 13th. You may only see it once, but that will be enough. Friday the 13th.
So that clip came to you from Friday the 13th from 1980. The plot is a group of camp counselors trying to reopen a summer camp called Crystal Lake, which has a grim past, are stalked by a mysterious killer. It was directed by Sean Cunningham. It was written by Victor Miller. And it stars Betsy Palmer, Adrienne King, Janine Taylor, Robbie Morgan, Kevin Bacon. I forgot about Kevin Bacon being in the first one. That's how many of these we've seen.
Oh my god, you said his name and I was like, what? Oh my god. That was great. Good.
Wow. And
a slew of other folks,
yeah,
honestly.
It doesn't matter. So, Dear, do you wanna start off
Sure.
talking about?
Okay, so going into this, I have never seen a Jason movie before, didn't know really much about the lore or anything at all other than the fact that he killed people, he wore a hockey mask, and he had a thing about water. Was really like my bare bones understanding of Jason Voorhees from my piecemealed like education system upbringing. Um, and so going into this, that was what I was expecting. I was like, all right, we're gonna start out, and it's gonna be all of those things. And the franchise said, what if none of that stuff was here? Um, and honestly, like I really loved this movie, though. All joking aside, I think that it is so like the classic, some kids at a summer camp get killed and like surprise killer at the end. And the whole time you think that it's going to be what they've told us, like the lore, what I went in thinking it was going to be Jason the whole time. And I think that it is so slept on that people forget that it's his mom. It's the mom the whole time. She's crazy. And I think that that's where this franchise was like this is the peak, guys. Start out strong and then stop watching. I think that that's my role.
Yeah, so this movie came out in the wake of Halloween, and as Sky talks about later on in part 2, this definitely did come as like a kind of, we can do that right after Halloween, because this is 2 years later. So like Halloween comes out 78, takes them about a year to, I guess, get the thing together, and the wheels rolling on it. And they just sort of went and were like, we can copy and paste and do this exact same concept, and it'll be the mom, and that'll just sort of be that. And it's pretty good. Like, I grew up, I think, more like aware of Freddy and Jason and some of these icons than you did, but that's also not because I watched them, but just because like a bunch of kids that I knew growing up watched them.
Yeah.
And so like I heard all about like Freddy and Jason from other kids, and like when Freddy versus Jason came out, like kids couldn't shut up about it. And so I heard like all sorts of stuff from that, and then of course meeting film people and meeting horror film people, you hear things about them as well. And you get odd tidbits in classrooms, and stuff like that. So I came into it, kind of having some expectations, and I had seen obviously clips and bits from them over the years, but I had never sat down and watched all of them start to finish, other than the first one I had ever seen was the remake, actually. I'm a liar. The first one I ever saw was the remake. And I had watched it with Austin because we had picked it up for like Halloween one year, but we ended up not even watching it that night. And so then we ended up watching it like a totally different time, if I'm not mistaken.
Classic.
And I thought that it was like fine. I thought the remake was fine. It kind of was exactly what I thought it was going to be of a Friday the 13th movie. And so then going back and seeing this first one, especially after then hearing later on, I knew about the Mrs. Voorhees twist before I saw the movie. And so, like, going in and sitting down and watching it, if anything, I was kind of like, wow, they really kind of, like, left field you with this whole it's the mom shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it does make sense, but at the same time, like, her motivation and everything makes sense, but there's no clues about her being the killer in any kind of way.
No, because, like, you don't see the killer from any perspective other than, like, their perspective.
Yeah, it's not... They use the killer POV thing from Halloween, to that effect, but unlike Halloween, no one is clearly seeing this person.
Oh, no.
It's always obscured in shadow. And I think that on a certain level, I don't know, I always hate, like, it was this one character that you never fucking Saw ever. Like, I kind of hate that trope. And this was probably before it was, like, really tired and tried, and I'm probably just making that complaint from, like, a modern audience, you know, sort of view place. But, I don't know. I really enjoy the first one a lot. I definitely think that it is the best out of this whole franchise, because out of all of them, it has, like, the most interesting perspective. Mrs. Voorhees' motivation makes a lot of sense. The acting is probably at some of the best from the teen cast in this one. I mean, at least we have Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
And so, like, I like the first one definitely, again, like, the best. It was exactly what I expected it to be, but also you can see where the birth of these ideas are. But it's also kind of so disconnected from everything else. You know, I know that we talk about Jason Voorhees' mom going forward, but, like, wow, do we forget about Jason Voorhees' mom moving forward?
Oh yeah, no, she's just something that is used as his backstory plot point, and then at a certain point, honestly, forgotten until the remake.
Yeah, honestly, the Friday the 13th movies, I don't think what I realized when I sat down to watch them was that essentially it's 3 movies to get to the version of Jason that everyone knows.
Yeah, but they definitely, you can tell they didn't start this whole thing with that in mind. So it feels really like that improv game where you end off on like a and then you, like, the next person has to, like, pick up where you left off and, like, make some other crazy story. Like, it feels like everybody just did that a few times over, and then they were like, and then chapter 4, when we tie a nice pretty bow on the franchise.
Honestly, for me, I think the best part of Friday the 13th Part 1, the first one, is probably actually those last few minutes once we start closing in on it being the last girl left.
Oh yeah.
It's a slow burn movie, and that's not a bad thing about that film, but it's just, you know, you watch people get sort of picked off piecemeal here and there. It's obvious you see each one coming from a mile away because someone is like, I'm going off alone for this nebulous reason. And,
classic.
like, it's pretty obvious whenever someone is going to be picked off for the most part. It's interesting how much Friday the 13th, this is a random thing, it doesn't just crib off of Halloween, it cribs off of others, but one interesting element that is introduced in the first one that carries on throughout all of the other ones is the weird homeless or, like, dirty country person.
Oh, okay.
Thing.
Yeah.
Which definitely comes from Texas Chainsaw.
No, yeah, because also, like, he's not just Michael Myers, he's also Leatherface.
A little bit, yeah.
You know, and he might also be a little, I don't know, Quasimodo in a way, because, like, they
go for the sort of physical deformity thing.
Yeah, but also, like, through that physical deformity he has found, like, great strength or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's very otherworldly, and I think that that's where they end up going with he's just, like, an undead entity from hell or whatever. He can do all things.
No, I think that it's I think that first one's really, really good. I think that it's obvious that it's a copycat, and I think that it's interesting that, like, for me growing up, Friday, now I feel like Halloween is the most popular one. But that's probably because it's the one that's currently making content. But I feel like growing up,
yeah,
Friday the 13th was the one that I grew up really knowing. And now that I've seen so much and know so much, going back and watching all of these movies, but even the first one, you know, it is so obvious how much of a we're just gonna crib shamelessly these ideas. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, the first one doesn't deserve its place amongst the genre, you know, or any of the sequels. But I definitely think that, honestly, Friday the 13th, of all of these franchises that I am currently looking at up on this wall, it is probably my least favorite. And so even amongst, like, the classic originals, Friday the or the first films of these 5 franchises. Friday the 13th, the first one, is still actually probably my least favorite.
No, yeah, I'd say that is fair, and I'd also second that. I'd say, because frankly, at the end of the day, you can see it. You can see where they're cheating, and at the end, and like even if like it's gone so far as it has, like it was by a wish and a prayer, guys. Like, we were holding on to threads. It was never meant to last this long, and you can really see that with how the franchise dissolves into chaos and madness.
Yeah. Mrs. Voorhees definitely is the savings grace of that first one for sure.
Oh yeah, she's the best part of it. I think that's the best like twist that they do in any of them. Except for Jason X when they're in space, because it doesn't matter at that point, and it's just fun to watch him kill in space. But no, I think that this one is probably like the best of the best of the Friday the 13th, and it has a lot to say that it doesn't even have our main killer in it.
Mm-hmm. Out of 5, what would you give Friday the 13th, the first one?
Oh, I think I'll give it a 3.5.
Okay, I was gonna give it a 4. For me, it does have that charm. It is simple. I think the writer is probably on a certain level more passionate about it than probably the filmmakers were, the producers, the people that made it. And I think that Mrs. Voorhees and those last few minutes probably saved the movie for me to still give it probably like... You know what? I'll give it a 3.5. You won me over. I stopped and thought about my argument, and I was like, you know what? No, I'll give it a 3.5. That's fair.
I like that I didn't have to say anything to talk you out of that argument.
No, I could see where the argument was gonna go, and I don't know. I gave it some thought, and I was like, no, she's right. Overall, on the franchise at large, the one thing that I think is the strongest point about the Friday the 13th franchise, even more than some of the others, is that it's almost like a pick your own adventure story. You can just watch the 3 Friday the 13th movies that you like, and that's it, and you're done with it. And
Yep.
You don't have to touch them again, do them again, think about them in any kind of way. And I think that that's kind of fun, that there is this almost weird building block kind of way that the stories work together. Let me tell you, the way that they are not meant to be watched is back to back to back to back to back, especially where you are trying to focus on them and really pay attention to them. Like Friday the 13th, more than any of these other franchises, invite people over.
Oh yeah, no, this is like a college drinking game movie franchise. Like, you've got beer pong or something happening in the background, and you're like watching this movie out of sheer boredom, and you're like having fun with it because you've got a lot of things in your system. But just on its own, you should never watch them back to back, because otherwise you're just going to be watching the same sequences. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but the first 20 minutes practically of every one of the first few movies is just the last 20 minutes of the previous movie.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the plot of this movie. It is just some weird remember that moment, and then they move on, and it's painful. It is probably my least favorite part of the entire franchise is that artistic choice.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that it's very obvious that they don't necessarily, to your point, that you talked about them not having a plan. Sky also later on talked about how this and Nightmare on Elm Street, but honestly, especially on a certain level, I think the Friday the 13th franchise, and Halloween's guilty of it too, of course, but all of these sequels clogged up and killed horror because they were the thing that was taking up the box office and all of the focus, and they choked it out. And we talked, I think, briefly later on about how disposable with Sky some of these sequels are, and like watching them play out, you feel it, because at a certain point they do become a haze. Whereas like I think even some of the Friday the Third or Nightmare on Elm Street sequels, even though some of their stories are blander than others.
There's always something that sticks out about someone, about something, whereas like the Friday the 13th doesn't do that. They are all just like, there's the hot blonde one, and there might be a person of color, and there's the douchebag white dude, and like they just kind of all just blend together.
Essentially what really starts to give you your only differentials are the locations. So, Jason takes Manhattan, which one barely has New York.
No.
And two, really mostly takes place on a boat. And so it's a complete mistitle. It is not Jason Takes Manhattan. Jason is in Manhattan for a little while. It's really Jason on a boat.
No, and it would have been so cool to have Jason running around killing random folk, just having a good time killing. And instead, he just gets to Manhattan to stalk this one, like, couple of people. And then that's it. He's in Times Square for maybe 2 minutes. That's the whole movie. It's Jason on a boat.
Yeah, so, like, at a certain point, the only thing that really starts to differentiate them is, like, the location of the movie or the fact that, like, Jason Goes to Hell barely has any proper Jason in it. A lot of them really just become very gray and mushy and sort of bleed together. And the ones that do kind of stick in your head, I guess I'll say this is maybe a positive. The ones that you like do, I guess, end up sticking in your head more than the others.
Yeah, I'd say that that's fair. And honestly, like, looking at our rankings over here, I would say that that's also how this kind of panned out, was like the ones that we could remember the most exciting things about and enjoyed watching them from beginning to end are higher up than the ones that kind of just like blended into the background.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a fun franchise. I think that of all of the slasher franchises, it's chronologically of these the second one. The original Nightmare on Elm Street is like 80. It's a few years later.
What was it? It's 81, I believe.
84.
84. Okay.
So,
oof, I was off. That's fine.
Chronologically, this is the second franchise. And it is fun, but it's also in a lot of ways the most disposable of them, the least memorable in some ways of them. And I see why people like it, but it is very disposable. Like, I think that if people were to go to and try and make a comparison of, like, a similar franchise in modern cinema, it would probably be, like the Transformers movies.
Oh.
Or maybe, like, the Fast and Furious franchise.
I think that that's more fair. I think that Fast and Furious is constantly trying to one-up itself, and that's kind of how the Friday the 13th movies feel. It's, like, constantly trying to one-up itself, but, like, poorly.
Also a little bit kind of like, and we talked about this, the Resident Evil franchise,
Oof,
where we constantly do this recap, where we also retcon some things to fit whatever the current narrative is, and then we move on.
It's really sloppy.
Yeah.
But fun, but sloppy.
Yeah. So, do we want to share our ranking?
Sure,
For the Friday the 13th films?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So one we both agreed was the first one, Friday
Yes.
the 13th. We also agreed on number 2, Jason X.
Woo!
It's fun. It knows what it's doing. It's aware. It's a campster piece, on par with Army of Darkness. Like it totally knows what it's doing. It's you want Jason in space? Here it is. It's just as full of sexually charged people doing irresponsible things. It has just as little proper authority, and Jason goes on just as much of a rampage.
Yeah. And
it's a blast.
And he has like a transformer moment where he like upgrades himself. It's just a good time.
There's a female robot with her creator, and part of the whole thing is like they have sex and it makes her more powerful.
Yes.
Or at least it increases like their odds of survival.
I think that's because she becomes more powerful.
So it's
through sex.
Totally out there. It's a wild movie.
Love it.
Then third is Friday the 13th, Part 4, The Final Chapter, which is not the final one, because there are 12 of these. Which is a great movie. That one has Crispin Glover, who is absolutely tremendous as an actor. It's teenage Crispin Glover. He does great in every scene he's in. He steals every one. He makes terrific choices. Incredible instincts as a young actor.
Yes,
his dance moves.
Oh my gosh, his dance moves are intriguing to watch and sexually repellent.
Depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I guess so. They're out of sight. Dynamite.
So then we have, moving on,
number 4.
Part 7, The New Blood, which is essentially Michael fights a girl who's kind of like, or not Michael, Jason. Jason ends up fighting a girl who's kind of like,
this is the one
like
with...
a Stephen King Firestarter Carrie type girl with psychic powers and telekinesis and things like that.
She's just Jean Grey, but not a redhead.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty campy. I like it. You have to buy into the sort of magic early on. They start out immediately like, this girl has powers. It's not her mind like playing tricks on her. She has powers.
And we're gonna deal with that. Let's move on. Like
yeah, and if you don't buy in, then the rest of the movie is probably a bad time for you. But if you're willing to just kind of go like, okay, it's just like Carrie. She has powers. In fact, I was looking at some information at these films, and like even the production kind of called it like Jason versus Carrie.
Ha! That's how you know. Even the people were like, we're just cheating.
Number 5 is Friday the 13th, Part 2.
Yeah.
Number 6, we have and that's where Jason gets introduced for realsies.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the mask in this one. He's got like a
cloth hood with a little cutout,
like a burlap
and
sack.
that one's pretty interesting. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, they're kind of doing some weird like
they're trying
seance stuff with his mom's head in that one. I think that's probably the furthest we go into that plot line, and then they never touch it again, which boo. It was probably the most interesting part of his backstory.
And then we have
so number 6.
Number 6, we actually have a split opinion. So I like Part 3, which is also part of the 3D trend in films. Ooh. Where we had like Jaws 3D, and we had Amityville 3D, and then we also had Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. And it is aggressive. You were yo-yoed at in 3D. And then
they were like, how hard can we throw 3D in their faces? I don't know. Put it in as many places as you can. All right, so we'll do yo-yos. Somebody will juggle. It'll be a great time.
Stab wounds. Woo, passing of a joint. Everything.
So good.
And then Lauren picked Part 6, Jason Lives, which is when Jason, for a little while, for one movie, Jason is dead. And then he is finally resurrected. And this is Lauren's preferred one, which kind of carries over some characters that are introduced in 4. Tommy, who goes through 3 different castings. Corey Feldman, the Goonie himself in Part 4.
Yeah, child Tommy.
And then he becomes a guy who knows Kung Fu.
Yeah.
In Part 5.
Yes.
And then in Part 6, it becomes a different guy who ends up being the person who wakes up Jason, and then he's working hard to put him back into Camp Crystal Lake with chains and things.
We really start this movie with a reanimation of Jason, a la Frankenstein's monster. Like, he gets electrocuted. Wait, that's not... No, this is this one.
No,
because
he has like a nightmare. Where he goes and he He just goes and digs him up with his bud.
No, yeah, and then that's how he gets reanimated is he gets literally struck by lightning.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
No,
Sorry,
yeah, and
it's been a lot.
And then Jason does a switcheroo, puts
That's
the
right.
buddy's dead body in his grave, and it's great. It's a fun time. Again, just turn off your brain and watch. It's a good time. But honestly, like, this was really the only one we differed on, and we just reversed our order of these two films. So like, our part 7 is like him. Your number 7 is my number 6, and vice versa. Yes.
Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah, then 7 we switch them. Number 8 is Friday the 13th, the remake from 2009, which just kind of condenses all of his part 1, 2, and 3 backstory into like one single movie, where essentially the first movie you only get the end of it during the opening credits, and then you kind of play out the rest of like part 2 and part 3 in one movie with one group of teenagers. And it's fine, it's efficient, it's a little gratuitous, but so's the entire Friday the 13th franchise.
And honestly, like, if you're just looking for a nice, clean, Friday the 13th movie without a lot of, like, fluff, I would watch this one. It's very, like, this is what you get.
Yeah, I mean, it does have like some gunk in there, but like it's not too bad.
Well, yeah, but also, like, this whole franchise has got a lot more gunk in it, like, and I think that watching one movie is probably worth watching if you don't want to watch all 4 of the first ones.
Yeah, that's fair. So then number 9 is Jason Goes to Hell, which is not at all what it sounds like. Essentially what it actually is Jason gets resurrected. His body gets blown up, and then a coroner eats a heart, which turns him into Jason. And then it's like a possession thing, and he runs around killing people, and they're very much riffing on The Thing. Later on in the movie, they even have the Arctic Crate. And it's fine. I like some of the ideas with it, but like it doesn't do anything fun with it. He doesn't like just take a body and just live with that body and move on, which could have also been interesting.
Yeah.
He does a lot of switcheroo stuff.
And I guess,
just to ultimately get back to having his own original body.
Which, like, and at this point he's, like, really rotten and, like, zombified, and so you gotta wonder why. You know, At the end of the day, just why? Also, I'm sorry, Jason Goes to Hell is false advertising. He doesn't. I never saw Hell one time. Disappointing.
Then next up we have part, what is that, part 8?
Yeah, that's part 8. Jason Takes
Manhattan. Which, as I said earlier, is Jason takes a boat. Essentially, like a group of people go out on like a weird cruise to New York as like part of their
like a grad bash
yeah.
thing that they have, where they go on like a yacht to Manhattan from Crystal Lake, and Jason gets on board and he kills a whole bunch of people on that boat.
And then they end up in Manhattan for like the last 15 minutes of the movie, or 10 minutes of the movie.
And all you see is backlot sets of alleyways, and he's in Manhattan for literally like 2 minutes, and it's pretty sad.
It's because New York was probably too expensive for them to film in.
Then don't tell me that it's Manhattan.
Just do it on a boat.
Just do it on a boat.
And then number 11 is A New Beginning, which is the follow-up to 4, where Corey Feldman grows up into a guy who knows martial arts, and it ends up not actually being Jason, which is probably the most interesting thing about the movie. The rest of the movie is just... It's not very good, and that's honestly all I'm going to say about it.
It's a pretty boring teen drama for the rest of the movie.
And our lead is near mute and not very compelling, and it's just not very good.
No, yeah, he's like a less interesting version of like Chuck Norris, because you can tell that he got cast because he can do the kick, and that was pretty much it. Like, oh, he's rough.
And then coming in last is Freddy vs. Jason, because it's the worst of Freddy, it's the worst of Jason.
It's the worst CG I've ever seen. It's a hate crime.
And it just doesn't do anything all that interesting with either premise. And it also isn't as campy as it should be. It gets very dour compared to, like, Jason X.
Yeah, it was a really boring movie to watch. Very disappointed.
Yeah. So that was Friday the 13th.
Whew, boy howdy.
Yeah. And I think that it's definitely worth the watch. But also, if I were going to suggest, if I may, I would do 1, 2, 3, 4. Then, I would probably then, after that, if I had to just watch any more, go to 7. Then just skip it all the way to Jason X.
And then if you want, I guess, like, watch the remake.
Yeah, and that's probably what I would do.
But, like, don't worry about the rest of it. It's okay.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
You don't need them.
We've forgotten they existed anyway.
And so that was Friday the 13th, and moving on, we now have A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes, we do.
So take a listen.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
You could just see cuts happening.
What did that, Lieutenant?
I don't know.
Tina! What's the coroner got to say? He's in the John puking since he saw it.
They're gonna kill me for sure.
Did you do it?
There was somebody else there.
He was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out in a rubber bag.
No one knows where it came from or who it will visit next.
Nancy? There's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Do you believe in the boogeyman?
So that was A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, and it was written and directed by Wes Craven, and the plot is a monstrous spirit of a slain child murderer seeks revenge by invading the dreams of teenagers whose parents were responsible for his untimely death. And it stars Heather Langenkamp, Johnny Depp, Jason Saxon, Lynn Shay, and Robert Englund as Fred Krueger. And I guess I'll start off with this one.
Sure.
I have seen a lot of stuff, honestly, always talking about Freddy Krueger. Growing up, I heard a lot about Freddy Krueger, but he was none of the kids' favorites that I knew. All the kids liked Jason. Mm-hmm. Probably because he was simple on a certain level.
Yeah.
And so they didn't, I think, really get Freddy, and so, like, kids growing up, you know, weren't too keen. And then growing up, I met more Freddy fans, and I saw a lot of stuff always talking about, like, the visuals of the dream, and the puppetry, and the visual wizardry of the movies, and things like that. And I always knew the blood scene, the infamous Johnny Depp blood scene, and I knew that this was also, like, you know, baby Johnny Depp, before everything else that happened with Johnny Depp. And so,
Yikes.
You know, it was a lot of fun going in and watching this, because we did watch this one after Friday the 13th, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much fun. I liked this one so much more. I think that this is such a fun film. It's a simple story. It has the same problem of all of these films of that era where the ending is a little bit vague. But other than that, I think it's a lot of fun.
No, yeah. Okay, so I really enjoyed the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. But this first one is is so refreshing of a movie, especially considering the fact that Jason is just a copy of Michael, and it boiled down, that Freddy feels so different and so new comparatively, because he is a talker, he is quick and witty, and going into this, I did not know really much about Fred Krueger or the story or any of his backstory. I knew the look. The look was all I really knew about who he was. The classic striped shirt, the hat, the glove. It was at every Halloween, religiously. And so, like, that's all I knew. And I didn't even know, how old these movies were, how campy they are. Nothing, nada, zilcherino. And I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I do think that the ending is a little vague, but I also think that that's kind of a trope of all of these movies. It's just kind of like, did they die or didn't they? Find out next time. It feels kind of like an 80s cartoon in that way.
No, yeah. I think, to your point, Fred is so much more his own person. He is so very different. Also, unlike, Friday the 13th, which really just does have a lot of kids in there to kill them off, this is a little bit more like Halloween, where it is a smaller group of characters. You get to know these kids a little bit more. You care about their relationships a little bit more. So then when you do see these deaths, which in their dream world are so wild and shocking and out there, but then in reality are just, essentially like someone being, like, drug around on the ground, bloody. I think it's really effective, and I think it really works well for the movie. And also, I think the fact that they do things, so interesting, even in this one with the visuals, that I think other people would be afraid would look hokey. I think that they just kind of steer into the skid really intelligently in just kind of living in the reality of the dream world.
No, yeah, and I think that they make a really to your point, I think that they make a really good distinction between what is a dream and what is reality by kind of like stylizing them and really using kind of like the campy blood and gore effects to their advantage, because honestly some of that stuff still reads today and is pretty horrifying to watch. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really like where these movies, above all of these franchises, really hold up for me, is just like how creative they are. Mm-hmm. And it is like your worst nightmare, and like I applaud the people who made these movies, because work went into it.
Yeah. Even though it has some definitely lesser entries in the franchise and in the slasher genre at large, this franchise is just, it was really gripping for me. It was a lot of fun. It is probably my favorite not my favorite, but I probably prefer it over Candyman. Mm-hmm. But I definitely also still prefer Candyman over Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I'd say that's fine.
Nightmare on Elm Street's probably my third favorite slasher franchise of the 5 that we're talking about, and it is because it is just, it's committed to its bit. Yeah. For so much of it. And it's always at its weakest when it pulls away from it. Mm-hmm. In Freddy vs. Jason, it's a very bad Freddy movie. In Freddy's Dead, it's a pretty boring Freddy movie. In Freddy 2, or in Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy 2, Freddy's Revenge, it's a pretty kind of boring Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It's always at its best when they are going for those visuals that stick in your brain, whereas Friday the 13th, it's body count left, right, and center. Some of those kills are memorable.
Yeah, but also they just kind of blend together at a certain point.
Yeah, whereas there are so many distinct and unique and gripping visuals in each of these films.
Oh, yeah.
And Robert Englund also just, he gets to play the part across all of these films, and he's so good with the part. He absolutely gets Freddy, and how nasty he is, but how much fun Freddy is having.
Yeah. And I think that that's where it really thrives too, is when Freddy is having the most fun. And like, you don't have to get his sense of humor, but he thinks he's hilarious. And I think that those are the moments where like he finds the most twisted ways to kill people, and you know, I believe it all the more that like that these dreams are real. Is when he's at his funniest, at his prime, you know, at his peak. I think that that's why Freddy versus Jason is really sad to watch. It's just because it's like he's just being
kind of an idiot.
Yeah, and it sucks. It sucks to watch like such a weird, twisted maniac kind of just get boiled down to like simple tropes.
Yeah. Well, and looking at, you know, Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, Nancy is definitely the next best final girl. The final girl in Friday the 13th is not really much of anyone. Nancy is definitely, and it's not just because I've seen her in other Nightmare films since this one. I think Nancy is just all around a more interesting character than the lead of Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I'd say that that's fair, because honestly, I couldn't tell you the name of that character right now. I think it might be Karen, but don't quote me on that, because I'm not confident. We've heard a lot of like names shuffled around aimlessly throughout these entire movies. Paul was one that I heard a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would agree. I think that Nancy was like just a very strong final girl. I didn't once think that she was incapable of doing anything. You know, obviously we see more of her later on in the franchise, but no, for this first one, I just really enjoy it. I enjoy watching Johnny Depp's death in the bed. It's a crazy ride.
They only did it once. That's not just because of like the sheer difficulty of like executing it. It was that they turned the set upside down and they did it one time and they didn't have like a splash guard. No one thought about the fact that like they were about to do like a liquid set. And so they just pumped in gallons of blood through the set. They turned it upside down and just pumped in gallons of blood, and it rushed right off the ceiling and off of the set, and it caused lamps to fall over. Film lights. When I say lamps, I mean like professional film lights. Ended up falling over. Bulbs were blowing up.
That's
like
horrifying.
It was a very
started a fire.
expensive. Yeah, it could have electrocuted someone. It was a very expensive single
Mess.
shot, and it was if I'm not mistaken, it is the one that is in the movie, and that is the only one. I think they ended up also losing a camera as well.
They almost like didn't get this shot. It sounds like it is sheer luck that the movie got made at this point.
But yeah, I really enjoy that first one. Out of 5, I think I would give Nightmare on Elm Street, if I gave that one a 3.
We gave Freddy.
If I gave Friday the 13th
a 3.5.
3.5. And the first Halloween for me is a 5. Then this one I'll probably go with like a 4 to a 4.5. I'll go with a 4.5.
I was gonna go 4.5. I think that this movie is just really solid, and is kind of like the groundwork for where the rest of these kind of go, because they never truly go away from that first kind of who Freddy is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where it's the strongest for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go with a 4.5.
Okay. So for our ranking overall of the franchise, our next one, again, we shared our opinion actually on the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Yeah.
So our second one is 4, The Dream Master, which is when a girl from 3, the Dream Warrior, has her power kind of used against her, and Freddy starts to steal the souls of children that she knows, but she gets their ability. And then at the end, it's got this really wild visual of like people in his body like moving around and stretching out of him and like grabbing him onto like a a structure, and it's really great. It's absolutely, it's wild. And it's a good movie. I like that she gets all of these powers. She takes over for Patricia Arquette, and I think that she does a good job on the part. I think that she's more memorable for me than Patricia.
Yeah.
No offense to dear Patricia. Then 3, New Nightmare, essentially Freddy Krueger. This is a non-canonical film, but Freddy Krueger starts to haunt the actor that plays Nancy in reality until he almost bleeds all the way over into reality.
Yeah, I liked this one. It was kind of almost like a Truman Show of sorts, where it was like reality was bleeding over into the basically the first movie's reality. Like, I thought it was neat. I thought it was a neat concept. I really enjoyed it, and we got to see Nancy again, or Heather, as what is her real name and is her name in the movie. Mm-hmm. And it was also fun to see Robert. Oh gosh, what's his last name? Freddy.
Robert Englund.
Robert Englund out of costume as well, and just being like a fun artistic person.
Yeah, being, I guess, some parody version of himself, perhaps.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed New Nightmare, where I think that the Freddy isms of it are definitely terrifying, but I also do think that they are a little of the monotonous version of the Freddys that we do get from the franchise, and it's probably my only note for it, but overall I do very much enjoy that movie.
No, for sure. Let's see. From there, yes, thank you. We've got 3, Dream Warriors, which is essentially Nancy from the first film is now a therapist, psychiatrist, and she oversees this group of teens who are all institutionalized, having dreams of Fred Krueger, and Nancy helps them band together in their dreams and overcome Freddy. And it's got some really cool visuals again, and it's got a really good teen cast in it. You know, it almost is a little bit kind of like a weird superhero movie on a level, like a teen superhero movie. You can see where New Mutants was like definitely getting a lot of its ideas. Both, I think, the comic and the movie were trying to get a lot of their ideas from this one in particular.
No, yeah, honestly, you saying that, I completely agree with that. I think that this is the better version of New Mutants. Mm-hmm. It is kind of like a superhero movie in a sorts, because they all have like dream powers that they use to fight Freddy in the end. But I also just really enjoy the kind of like asylum aspect of it, of these kids just not being believed, and it being something so simple, and still the authority figures are like, no, you clearly just need to get some rest. If only you would sleep. It's but I think that they do it really cleverly in this one.
No, for sure. Number 5 is Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, which is essentially Freddy Krueger has a weird Roe v. Wade episode where Freddy is haunting everyone through the unborn child of our lead character. And so, like, you'll just have to watch it to understand, I think, exactly, because I don't want to get deep in the woods on this.
No,
on how
yeah.
it's... But if you watch it, it's a very strange one. It's not bad, but I'm not sure. For me, I think it's a little misguided, maybe, is probably a fair way to put it.
I guess it's just not really clear of which side of the argument it stands on, but also, like, I'm not gonna spoil it for you. I don't think that this movie is for everyone, is where I'll leave it.
And it's just okay. It's one of the lesser memorable ones beyond, like, how it's dancing around this conversation on abortion. Like, beyond that, it's one of the lesser memorable ones.
No, but the most memorable part for me is the fact that it has the kid from Jurassic Park in it. That's like the only memorable part, but he's like smaller in this one and precious.
Mm-hmm. When she says the kid from Jurassic Park, she does not mean Timmy. She means the kid that Alan scares at the Velociraptor dig site, where he's like, "That's not scary. Looks like a 6-foot turkey." That's who she's referring to.
Yes.
So then, moving on, we have number 6, which is A Nightmare on Elm Street, the 2010 remake. It's fine, and it's fine. I think it's a little hamstrung by how serious it is. I think it makes the mistake. It goes for so long being like, aha, the whole thing of the movie this time is that Freddy was actually innocent and the parents just were vengeful, blood-hungry people. But then they walk it back in the last, 10, 15 minutes of the movie, and it's the absolute biggest mistake.
Yeah, because...
And Freddy doesn't seem like he's having as much fun.
No, yeah, it just seems like he seems a lot creepier in this one as well, and I'll give the movie that. Like, he definitely felt like a pedophile, and I think that's probably the most that I've ever experienced that. And I guess to its benefit, I understand, where it's now why they're teenagers out of nowhere, even though he was supposed to be like a child, creep. But other than that, I think that he's just vengeful and mean, and everybody's pointing fingers at everybody, and it cops out in the end. And boom.
Yeah. Number 7 is A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. I liked a lot of this one conceptually. There's an interesting discussion that's going on in the film about coming out and realizing, that you're gay and that sort of thing. And it's super interesting in that, but it's not a very, it's one of the least Freddy movies of all the Freddy films. Again, I'm not sure that it sticks the landing on all of its ideas that it is reaching for. I think it's reaching for more than it lands. And again, it's also just not nearly as memorable beyond this one particular sort of weird bondage murder kind of thing that happens when a coach is committing an act of violence upon a child. So it's quite the movie in its own right, but it's just not as fun.
Yeah, no, it's really just kind of like a possession story. Freddy's trying to be reborn through this teenager, and so it's honestly kind of reminds me of the first Candyman, where he's doing it through Helen's body, so she's the one who's getting blamed for everything, and at the end of the day,
Yeah. And then beyond that, our last one is 8, Freddy's Dead, where we get the backstory where Freddy actually had a family and he had a daughter and she doesn't remember, and it's fine. It's a pretty forgettable one. It also, again, for me, didn't have really as striking of visuals. None of our actors really hit home for me. None of what we got from his backstory, I think, really felt particularly relevant. It was fine.
No, yeah, because honestly, all of the things that we got from his backstory were through her trying to remember that she's Freddy's daughter the entire time. But honestly, she's just really bad at her job. It was obviously obvious that they just wrote her a part and then didn't know what that job entailed and was like, she's a psychiatrist or something. But then she's just as helpless as everybody else. I don't think that she actually got that degree or whatever. It's just half thought through, and that's sad.
Yeah, and it just didn't strike a chord for me at all.
No.
So that does it for part 1 of this episode, which of course is going to cover, or has already covered, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Out of these, if I had to rank the franchises just, so far into the episode, Halloween is definitely 1, followed by Nightmare, followed by Friday the 13th.
No, I'd agree with that as well. I mean, gosh, it really can only go in that order for me. There's no way of changing it around. Yay!
Yeah, so that will wrap up part 1 of this episode, and we hope that you enjoyed it enough that you'll come around and listen to part 2, where we're joined by Sky as we discuss Candyman, and then he joins us specifically to discuss Scream.
Awesome.
So stick around.
Yeah.
Thanks.